moments before signing away her $500 million fortune to her adopted children. Martha Ellis overheard a chilling secret, and what she discovered turned love into betrayal, and betrayal into justice. Martha Ellis, an elderly black woman who had sacrificed everything to raise two abandoned kids as her own, thought she was leaving them a future of comfort. But the night before finalizing her will, she paused outside their door and froze. Through the crack, she heard them whispering, plotting to tamper with her medicine, laughing about how soon her fortune would be theirs. Her heart shattered. Yet instead of breaking, she quietly set a trap. And when the day of the signing came, it wasn't the lawyer who walked through her door. Martha Ellis was not a woman of wealth, at least not in the beginning. She was a woman of endurance, of grit, of quiet sacrifices that nobody clapped for. Her skin had grown soft with age. Yet her hands still carried the marks of years bent over laundry tubs, of scrubbing floors, of long nights stitching clothes under a single dim lamp. People in her neighborhood used to say, "That woman works too hard for too little." But they never knew her secret resolve. She worked not just to survive, but to give something more meaningful to the world. That meaning came one cold evening when Martha found two children skinny, shivering, their faces smudged with dirt, huddled beneath an overpass. A boy and a girl no older than 7 or 8, their clothes torn, their bellies empty. Most passers-by avoided them, muttering things like, "Where are their parents? Poor street rats." But Martha stopped. She crouched, pulled off her old wool scarf, and wrapped it around their shoulders. That night she took them home. Her house was tiny, barely enough for one, but somehow it stretched for 3. She shared her food, her bed, even her worn-out slippers when the floorboards turned icy in winter. From that day she called them hers, and from that day life became harder. Martha skipped meals so the children could eat. She walked instead of taking the bus so they could afford pencils and notebooks for school. When her back gave out after years of bending, she pushed through the pain, whispering to herself, "They need you, Martha." Just one more day, one more shift. Neighbors noticed. Some gossiped in pity, others in admiration. "She's raising 2 strangers like her own at her age. That woman's a saint or a fool. Street kids never repay kindness. Watch. One day they'll run off and leave her." But Martha ignored the whispers. At night, when she saw the children finally asleep, their bellies full, their faces calm, she knew her choice was right. They were no longer abandoned kids. They were her family. The years rolled on. The children grew taller, stronger, sharper. They called her Mama in public, and that single word erased every ache in her body. To Martha, those kids weren't charity cases. They were her legacy, the proof that love could be chosen, not just born. But beneath her sacrifices lay a truth Martha never admitted, even to herself. She gave them everything because she had no one else. She had never married, never carried her own children, never had anyone call her name at the dinner table. These 2 souls were not just her dependents. They were her entire world, and for them she would endure anything. Poverty, hunger, ridicule. She believed that her sacrifices were planting seeds, seeds that would bloom into gratitude, love, and loyalty. She had no idea the seeds she nurtured so carefully would one day grow into something else entirely. Martha's life had always been stitched together with scraps. Scraps of food, scraps of money, scraps of luck. Yet she never stopped looking for ways to turn little into more. At first, it was nothing remarkable. She bought a patch of land outside town with a few dollars saved from scrubbing kitchens. People laughed when she planted vegetables on soil others called useless. "That dirt won't grow anything," one neighbor scoffed. But season after season, her small garden yielded enough to sell at the market. A few coins here, a few notes there, it added up. Then came the second chance. A friend told her about a local cooperative where women could invest small amounts into small businesses. Martha scraped together what she could, even selling her mother's old jewelry, and joined. It was risky, but she believed in growth and nurturing things the way she nurtured her children. Slowly, profits came back. Years passed, and every dollar was tucked carefully away. Her small patch of land became several acres. The vegetables turned into livestock, the livestock into property, and the property into shares. What began as a cracked clay pot of savings grew into a chest of gold. Her children didn't notice at first. To them, Mama was just Mama, tired, limping, but always present with a warm plate of food and a stern reminder to study. They didn't see the ledgers she kept at night, her neat handwriting calculating numbers under the glow of a candle, but others noticed. "Do you hear? Martha owns 3 houses now. At her age must be luck, or maybe she's smarter than we thought." Some respected her, others envied her. Yet through it all, Martha remained grounded. Every investment, every acre of land, every coin tucked away was for her children. She didn't crave luxury for herself. Her home was still modest, her clothes still patched. But for them, she wanted the world. And as the wealth grew, so did her pride. She would sometimes sit at the edge of her porch, watching the sunset paint the sky, whispering, "They'll never know hunger the way I did. They'll never walk barefoot in the cold. I've given them everything." By her late 70s, Martha's fortune had crossed into the unimaginable. An empire worth $500 million. To others, she was a success story. To her, it was simple. Love had multiplied. She thought the children she rescued would one day carry that love forward. But wealth, like soil, doesn't always grow what you plant. Sometimes it breeds something darker. By the time Martha reached 79, her body had grown fragile. The years of lifting buckets, walking long miles, and carrying burdens no one else would carry had left her with brittle bones and a heart that sometimes beat too slow, sometimes too fast. She tried to hide it from the children. When her chest tightened, she would clutch the edge of the counter, breathing through it until the world steadied. When her knees gave out, she would laugh it off, saying, "Old age, that's all." But behind closed doors, the truth pressed heavier every day. Time was no longer her friend. Doctors warned her to rest. Pills lined her bedside table, each with instructions she often forgot. Sometimes she found herself staring at them, wondering if she even wanted to keep fighting. But then she'd glance at the family portraits on the wall, the children in their school uniforms, the smiles she worked so hard to create, and she'd swallow the medicine, whispering, "Not yet. They still need me." It was around this time she made the decision. If her body was failing, her legacy could not. She wanted no uncertainty, no disputes, no greedy outsiders circling when she was gone. Everything, every acre of land, every investment, every hard-earned cent would go to the 2 children she had raised as her own. She called her lawyer, an old friend who had watched her climb from rags to fortune. Together, they began drafting her will. Sitting at her desk, her shaky hand struggled to sign the first page. She paused, her chest rising and falling, thinking, "This is it. My life's work all for them." The children seemed supportive. They asked questions about her health, reminded her to take her pills, urged her to rest. To any outsider, it looked like love, and for a moment, Martha allowed herself to believe it was, but there were small cracks she didn't want to see. 2 sharp glances exchanged when they thought she wasn't looking. Hushed conversations that went quiet when she entered the room. She brushed it off as imagination, telling herself they would never. Still, the shadow lingered, and it wouldn't be long before that shadow revealed itself. The house was quiet that night. The kind of silence that feels almost too heavy, like the air itself was waiting. Martha sat in her armchair, a shawl draped across her shoulders, the steady tick of the clock the only sound keeping her company. She was supposed to be resting, but her body refused to surrender. Her mind wandered, chasing worries she couldn't pin down. That's when she heard it, a faint rustle, the creak of a floorboard down the hall, voices low, hurried, just out of reach. Martha leaned forward, holding her breath. It was them, her children. At first she thought they were discussing chores or maybe bills, but then the words sharpened through the crack in the door. Why wait so long? She's weak already. If she slips faster, everything comes to us. That will is already written. Her heart jolted, a painful thud that seemed to echo in her chest. She gripped the armrest, her fingers trembling. The pills, just adjust them. She won't notice. Who questions a sick old woman? Martha's breath caught. Her mouth went dry. She wanted to storm in, to shout, "How could you?" But her legs wouldn't move. Instead, she stayed frozen, listening as the truth carved itself into her bones. The children she had saved from the cold streets, the ones she fed when she went hungry, were plotting to hurry her death. Not strangers, not outsiders. Them, tears welled in her eyes. They blurred the clock on the wall, the lamp beside her, even the floor beneath her feet. For a moment she thought she might faint. She pressed a hand to her chest, forcing air into her lungs. Somewhere outside, two neighbors were chatting near the fence. Their voices carried faintly through the open window. "She's been looking weaker lately." "Yeah, but those kids will be set for life. Lucky them." Lucky. Martha almost laughed through her tears, if only they knew. Back inside, the whispers ended with a laugh. A laugh so cruel, so casual it pierced deeper than knives. The children walked away, their footsteps fading into the kitchen. Martha sat alone, her body shaking, her heart breaking in silence. Her whole life had been a gamble on love, and tonight she realized she had lost. But even in grief, a fire sparked. Betrayal had cut her, yes, but hadn't killed her. Not yet. And before her time came, Martha decided she would not leave this world quietly. Martha did not sleep that night. Her body sat in the armchair, but her spirit was pacing the room, restless and trembling. Betrayal gnawed at her chest, but beneath the hurt, something steadier was forming, a decision. By dawn, she had wiped her tears and steadied her hands. The first thing she did was pick up the phone. The number she dialed was not her lawyer, S, but the local precinct. Her voice quivered at first, but soon it grew clear. She explained what she had overheard, every word etched into her memory like fire. The officer listened, silent at first, then asked calmly, "Mrs. Ellis, do you feel safe right now?" Safe. The word tasted bitter. No, she wasn't safe. Not in her own home. Not in the presence of those she once called children. Still, she straightened her shoulders and said, "I will be." The police advised her to remain calm, to act natural, to let them handle the rest. But natural was the hardest thing to be when your heart was shattered. All that day, she moved through her house as though nothing had changed. She boiled tea, folded laundry, even hummed faintly in the kitchen. When the children passed her in the hallway, she smiled, a weak, trembling smile, a smile nonetheless. Inside, her stomach twisted. That evening, she made her move. "Tomorrow," she said casually over dinner, her fork barely touching her food, "the lawyer comes. We'll sign everything. All of it will finally be yours." The children's faces lit up. They exchanged a glance, one of those quick sparks of greed that might have gone unnoticed to anyone else, but Martha caught it, and though her heart cracked, she forced her lips into a gentle grin. Later, she sent out one more call to invite them for a celebration dinner. Her tone was warm, almost cheerful. "One last family meal," she told them, "before I put everything in writing." Behind her words, she carried silence like a weapon. That night, as she set the table for the next day, her hands trembled with every plate she placed down. The clatter of silverware against porcelain nearly gave her away. She paused often, gripping the edge of the counter until the shaking subsided. From outside, a pair of neighbors walking home passed by her lit window. She's still fussing with those kids at her age. Woman never quits. Well, she won't have to soon. They'll inherit everything. She'll rest and they'll rise. If only they knew the truth simmering behind that glass. By the time Martha finally lowered herself into her chair, exhaustion pulled at her bones. Yet in her chest burned a flicker of strength she hadn't felt in years. Tomorrow would be their undoing. The following evening, the house glowed with the soft warmth of lamps. The table laid out neatly with Martha's best dishes. To anyone passing by, it looked like a family dinner, a moment of joy before a mother entrusted her legacy to her children. The children arrived dressed sharply, their smiles wide, their laughter careless. They kissed her cheek, pulled out their chairs, and sat down as if the throne of $500 million was already under them. Martha sat opposite, her shawl drawn tightly around her shoulders. She forced herself to sip tea, to nod, to laugh at the shallow jokes. Inside, her chest was heavy, her pulse steady only because she had prepared herself for this moment. Halfway through the meal, a knock sounded at the door. The children's faces lit up. "That must be the lawyer," one said, already imagining signatures and ownership papers. But when the door opened, it wasn't a lawyer, it was the police. The officers stepped in, their badges glinting in the light, their voices calm but firm. "Martha Ellis?" one asked gently. She nodded. Then came the turn. "We're here on account of attempted harm and conspiracy against you." Confusion swept across the children's faces, quickly curdling into panic. "This is a mistake," they stammered. But the evidence Martha had provided, the overheard words, the tampered medicine bottles, the recorded calls, was undeniable. As the handcuffs clicked shut, Martha sat frozen, not triumphant, not smug, just tired, tired but alive. When the door closed behind the officers, silence filled the house once more. Martha's chest rose and fell, slow and steady, as though she had exhaled years of fear. In the weeks that followed, she rewrote her will not for the children who had betrayed her, but for children like the ones she had once found, abandoned, forgotten, yearning for love. Shelters, scholarships, homes that would stand long after her own body was gone. Her betrayal had cut deep. But her legacy would heal deeper wounds. Because family, she realized, isn't who you raise or who you sign papers for. Family is who guards your heart when the world tries to break it. Martha gave everything to children she thought were her legacy, only to find they wanted her gone. But instead of breaking, she turned her pain into power and her fortune into hope for countless others. Her story reminds us, family is not who you raise, but who truly guards your heart when the world tries to break it. If this story touched you, make sure to like, subscribe, and join us for more true stories that will stay with you long after they're told.